and slave labor camp. I am now the last Jewish camp survivor living in this area. By the painful sharing what happened to me and my family in those terrible years, I have played my part in keeping the memory alive, in the hope that it will help to reinforce the lessons we should have been learning from the Holocaust. Unbelievably, humanity seems incapable of learning from the past. And today, we live in a world where people are still being persecuted and murdered in most horrific circumstances. And we see it all what's happening and fail to stop it. Just as happened to me and more than 6 billion Jews, European Jews, including my family, for no other reason other than we were Jewish. We lived in a small town in Czechoslovakia with about 25 Jewish families living there. I have lovely memories of life before the war. My father was a wooden hay merchant, and with my mother we were a happy family with 4 children living in a lovely home with an orchard. My father's parents lived in a nearby village. We enjoyed good relations with our neighbor and our school friends. But in 1941, all this changed when we children had to go to Hungarian school and our father was recruited to the so-called army. These men had no uniform, just an armband with the Star of David. This army of Jewish men were made to dig the trenches under the lorries for the German armies. After one visit to us, we did not see our father again. In 1942, we were driven from our home to the town center, loaded onto lorries and taken to a ghetto in Košice. After 6 weeks or more, we were rounded up like animals and put into cattle trucks. There were 70 of us in those wagons, including babies, children, and the old. The wagon doors closed, and we were left in darkness. None of us had any knowledge of our destination. As the long train began to move, we fell silent. Our nightmare journey lasted 3 days and 3 nights, until we arrived at what we found later was called Auschwitz. We had never heard of the place, nor did we know where we were. As the wagon doors opened, feelings of panic and shock and disorientation set in. There were SS men and barking dogs everywhere, and blaring loudspeakers. An emaciated, weird-looking man in striped uniform came into our wagon. He asked my mother in Yiddish, "Which are your children?" He persuaded my mother to let my sister and I go ahead, that we would see her later. As we spoke to her in Yiddish, she was convinced it was the right thing to do. We were then separated from our mother and our 2 little brothers. I was 12 and a half, and my sister was 2 years older. He told me to say that I was 17. My sister was 19, and that we were seamstresses. As we joined the enormous trail of people who were confronted by Gestapo and SS officers, screaming orders, dogs barking viciously, and there was a general sense of panic. Flames were bellowing from chimneys, and above all, there was a very strange smell. Once we reached the famous gate, Arbeit macht frei, Work makes you free, inscribed over it, there was a selection. People who entered Auschwitz were either sent to the main camp as slave laborers or killed by gas on arrival, and particularly mothers and children, which this group consisted of. Auschwitz is not something that I can possibly describe in a few sentences. There is no language that can adequately expound it. And no one could have possibly imagined what was to come. My sister and I were admitted to the main camp. The sight that greeted us beyond the selection gate will stay with me for the rest of my life. There were corpses everywhere, emaciated people in striped uniform wandering around aimlessly. The smell from the burning crematoria, the dirt and the grey ash all around us. The entire area was enclosed by electrified barbed wire fences. Watchtowers with soldiers pointing machine guns at us. Not a blade of grass or a tree anywhere. We thought we had entered hell. The realization that we would not see our mother and our two little brothers again is too painful to describe. Or we imagined our mother's anxiety from arrival to the gas chambers. We were marched to be stripped naked, our hair shaven, and to be tattooed with a number. From then on, we had no name. We were given a dress and a pair of wooden clogs for our feet, but no underwear. Our sleeping quarters, known as a block, already held 1,000 women. The beds were 3-tier platform, which slept 8 people. But that night, they were all occupied, so we had no choice but to sit on the stone floor all night. There was no water to wash or to drink, and no sanitation. All kinds of infectious diseases, including an epidemic of typhoid, were rampant. The next morning, it was still dark when the whistle blew, and the men screamed, "Rouse out!" It was sailor pen, it was roll call. Selection to live or to die. We had to stand for those sailor pells in all weathers, 2 to 4 times each time for those life or death selections. And very often we had a Dr. Mengele walking around, known as the Angel of Death, immaculately dressed and carrying a pair of white leather gloves. When he waved these leather gloves at anyone standing in the road, they had to step out of line, and we would never see these people again. So there were daily selections as well as the transports coming in for the gas chambers. To eat, we were given a small piece of bread in the evening, and at lunchtime a cup of tasteless soup, which was made of turnips, which also contained some kind of chemical, possibly bromide, to dull our senses and to stop all women's bodily functions. It soon became apparent that the food ration could not sustain life for very long. We were selected to work in Canada. It was called Canada because of the wealth of possessions that were confiscated from the people arriving at Auschwitz. We had to tear open the linings of coats and jackets in search of valuables that people might have bought with them in case they survive, such as money, gold, or watches, which was always a big favorite. After summers, 500 women, including us, were selected for slave labor at an ammunition factory near Bremen in Germany. The camp was much smaller, and it had slightly better conditions than Auschwitz. There was no crematorium there, and it was not a desk camp. We were woken at 4 o'clock in the morning and marched to work at 5 o'clock, staying there till 7 o'clock. We were always hungry and cold. The armament factory was in a wood and underground, and we produced bombs and grenades. The tall girls were made to pour in the hot gun solution into the containers without any body or face protection. Some of the girls had perforated lungs. Some went blind from the acidity of the gun solution, and all our hairs turned red. We were given a soup at lunchtime at the factory canteen, and in the evening at our camp, a black coffee and a small ration of bread. We heard the bombing of Bremen and Hamburg most nights, and we became hopeful that the Allies were looking for the factory. The other thing that gave us hope that we might survive, that they won the daily selections, and they needed us to do the work. In May 1945, we were rushed onto a train, for the first time a passenger train, but once again, not knowing our destination, and with the guards with machine guns each end of the train. As the train was moving, we were bombed by the advancing Allied army, who did not know that the train contained concentration camps, slave laborers on board. Half of our 500 starving women were killed by Allied fire only one day before liberation. Those of us who survived the train bombing were made to walk to the port of Lübeck in northern Germany. Our SS guards still with us. Once we reached the port, they tried to load us into cattle trucks once more with the excuse that they would like to hand us over to the Red Cross. But their intention was to blow up the train. By some miracle, we refused to move off the hill. Anyway, we were sick and traumatized with everything, and we just didn't move. Dusk fell, and our Lagerführer suddenly appeared with his SS guards and told us that we were going to be free, and they were going to be into captivity, and that we were going to be free. We were eventually liberated by the British Armada, the last camp to be liberated before the war ended. We had many sick and wounded girls with us. I still marvel how soon we had medical care set up for us at a local school. The army fed us and cared for all our needs. They were devastated when they realized they were responsible for the bombing and so many deaths. As we slowly recovered, we started counting our heartbreaking losses and the realization what lay ahead. After Lübeck, we were transported by coach to a holiday village by the Baltic Sea called Havelburg. Some 3 months later, at our request, through the United Nations, we were then transported to Prague in hope of finding some surviving family. Within 2 hours of being there, we located an aunt and uncle who survived the Theresienstadt transit camp and Buchenwald concentration camp. They immediately cared for my sister and I, as we were the two youngest survivors of our family. Our main aim was to catch up with our education that we had missed during the war years. 3 years later, in 1948, the political situation became difficult in Czechland at the hand of the Russians, who had taken over the country, and we Jews were disliked by the Russians. We were forced to be on the move again before they were closing all the borders. I had to become stateless, and I was then able to get on the last transport of orphans out of Eastern Europe. 150 young people were allowed to come to England on a stateless passport. I came with that group with a guarantee that an aunt and uncle living in Birmingham would take care of me. My sister went to Australia with a surviving aunt and uncle. Once again, I was lucky to come to a home of another caring aunt and uncle in Birmingham instead of a hostel in Ireland where all the other orphans had to go before they were being placed to adoption or homes or something. And that was 3 years after the war. I always hoped to join my sister, who went with my Prague aunt and uncle to Australia, but 3 years later, I was happily married, and my family life began here with 2 daughters and in time 2 grandchildren. I am always asked, how did you survive? And my answer is always the same, sheer luck. But what I have found out last May, I think it was a miracle. The other is that in most situations of the Holocaust, people survive in pairs. In my case, a sister and 2 older cousins. A few years ago, I made a momentous and memorable journey back to Auschwitz with a group from the Birmingham Jewish community. Without doubt, it was a significant experience and a stark reminder of all that happened to me there, especially the surreal experience at looking at the cattle truck, which brought back the memories of our horrific journey to this place and all those years ago and what happened afterwards. The memorial service at the side of the truck provided me with some kind of closure. We survivors did not speak of what happened to us for many years after the war. No one wanted to hear about it, and for us it was hard to share. The media and the publishers were not interested to keep the memory alive at that time. It was more important to rebuild lives and countries because Europe was in such a mess. However, the publication of the Diary of Anne Frank saw the beginning of a new awakening and awareness of horrors of life of Jews under the Nazi regime, and the countless numbers of personal testimonies, as well as historical documentation, which is now available. Perhaps Schindler's List was the most significant film in the last few decades to bring to people's attention a visual glimpse of the Jewish experience of that time, even though it is almost impossible to convey the misery, the humiliation in any credible sense. In my view, commemoration and learning is vital, but not sufficient without not sufficient start action. We survivors have come forward in our advanced years to support the history lessons as credible witness of those terrible times during the Nazi occupation of Europe. In the last 10 or 12 years, I have told my story of survival and grief to hundreds of schools, universities, and many diverse groups of people. Because I believe that it is one of the reasons for my survival, to share what is impossible to believe with the next generation. Once I came to the UK to rebuild my life, I had two choices: either to drown in what happened to me or to rise above it. I was young and I was able to regain my desire for life. Eventually, I reconnected with my Judaism. I became part of a community and made my contribution to it and a wider community through my work and other activities. I found happiness and security with my family here. I married my husband Alan, and together we created our own family, which I cherish. It has been love and life itself which enabled me to go on.